Welcome back. I'm Rachel and you're watching 𝐊𝐴𝐚 TV live from Sydney. This is the Global Markets Roundup show. Let us now take a look at the European and Asian markets. European shares sank more than 2% on Monday, their worst session in 9 months. There were worries that the fast-spreading Delta coronavirus variant could slow the global economic recovery. Commodity-linked stocks, banks and travel shares lost more than 3%. German bond yields tumbled on Monday to the lowest since mid-February. Similar to the US, concerns over the economic impact of surging Delta coronavirus cases drove investors to stampede into safe haven assets. Countries worldwide are extending or reintroducing activity curbs in response to the rising infections. The London markets also traded in the red zone due to the investors' worries regarding the spread of the Delta variant of the COVID-19 pandemic in the UK. Crude oil price surged around 6.22% amid the slower recovery in demand levels. Travel stocks like Rolls-Royce and their shares dropped by around 5.86%, and international consolidated airlines Group, their shares dropped by around 4.88% due to the negative sentiments around the spread of the Delta variant across the UK. The FTSE 100 listed AstraZeneca shares dropped by around 0.58%, even after it had received China's approval for the drug to treat small cell lung cancer. Ultra Electronics shares marginally went down by around 0.08%. The company had achieved strong profitability during the first half, boosted by the strong demand from defence markets. Synthoma had raised the full-year guidance, boosted by the strong trading performance. Furthermore, the shares went up by around 0.2%. Moving on to the Asian markets now, Japanese shares ended lower on Monday for the fourth straight session, as sentiment was hit by worries over the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant, and the Tokyo 2020 Olympics could worsen the health crisis. The Nikkei share average fell 1.25%. Moving on to the next market in Asia, China's blue chip stock index ended higher on Monday. The share market was seen recouping earlier losses, which got supported by the healthcare and consumer firms and inflows through the Stock Connect scheme. And lastly, in the Asia segment, South Korean shares ended 1% lower on Monday, pulled down by technology heavyweights, as growing inflationary pressures and concerns over the surging COVID-19 cases dampened risk appetite. The won and the benchmark bond yield weakened. It's time for a short break now, but after the break we'll look at the Australian stock market, so stay tuned.
Tune in to stay updated while on the move.
We will tell you where the crypto craze has reached,
where the property market is headed next,
what the world is doing to become more environmentally friendly.
Apart from tracking the daily market charter.
Be on top of the latest news and announcements
with 𝐊𝐴𝐚 TV.
Welcome back. I'm Rachel and you're watching 𝐊𝐴𝐚 TV live from Sydney. This is the Global Markets Roundup show. Let us now look at the Australian share market performance. The Australian share market's on the lower side so far this morning. That's after US stocks tumbled due to a global surge in coronavirus cases, pushing away investors from risky assets. The overnight trade also saw concerns around rising Delta variant infections negatively impacting bond yields and oil prices. On Monday, the ASX 200 closed 0.85% lower. The Australian tech shares are expecting to trade lower on Thursday after the tech-heavy Nasdaq closed lower by 1.1%. Domestic tech shares such as Xero, Afterpay and BrainChip could face selling pressure. Major stocks such as Viva Energy, Santos and Woodside Petroleum could be under pressure today. Gold traded on a weak note on Monday between a strong greenback and a fall in Treasury yields. US gold futures dropped 0.5%. Gold miners such as Silver Lake Resources, Northern Star Resources and De Grey Mining could also be under pressure today. The most traded steel rebar on the Shanghai Futures Exchange for October delivery ended up 0.8%. Benchmark copper on the London Metal Exchange was down 2.1%. That's all for the Global Market Roundup. Stay tuned with 𝐊𝐴𝐚 TV for more live market updates. We'll be back with more news on the markets, economy, diverse themes and sectors. I'm Rachel, signing off for now.